Number 10. In May 2014 in Costa Rica, a man jumped off a bridge and into the Tarcoles River and was eaten by some hungry crocodiles. According to the local police reports, the man, identified as Omar de Jesus Giron, was causing a disturbance on the bridge early in the evening. The police were forced to remove the belligerent man from the bridge, and he made his way to a bar. He got himself good and drunk, returned to the bridge a few hours later, and then leaped into the river. It's unclear what he was trying to do exactly, but he was heavily under the influence. Spectators who were there for this dramatic plunge said that once the man went under the water, he never came back out. If you're familiar with this particular river in Costa Rica, you'll already understand why. The bridge itself is situated near the popular beach of Jaco. It's become a popular spot in recent years for tourists to stop and watch the American crocodiles thrashing in the river below. It's a known crocodile hangout where people even make YouTube videos of themselves feeding the crocodiles. Obviously, this is the last bridge you want to jump off of. Nonetheless, Omar took the leap. Some pieces of clothing were found at the scene. The Red Cross search team was unable to find his body after looking through the night. It wasn't until later on that a human head was found washed up on the shore. While unconfirmed, authorities do believe it belonged to Omar. Number 9. Swan River Shark Attack. In Australia last year in 2021, a shark attacked a man in a river. We usually think about shark attacks happening at the beach, but in Australia, they can basically happen anywhere there's water. This individual, in his 50s, was bitten by a bull shark so severely that he suffered critical injuries and had to be hurried to the hospital. According to the animal experts, it's not that shocking. Marine ecologist Johan Gustafsson said bull sharks are common in all major waterways across Australia, except for in the south, where it's a little too cold. It's just that they're shy and don't usually try to bite people. This was the first shark attack in the Perth River in 50 years. The only good news is that you'll never find a great white shark in a river system. There's just not enough raw meat for great whites to swim in such shallow water, but it is perfect for bull sharks, who prefer having their babies upstream and then migrating to the coast as their babies get bigger. Not so lucky for us humans. As for the man who was bitten by one of these massive apex predators, he did survive. It was described as a random incident, one we probably won't see again in our lifetime. Number 8. Piranhas in Argentina. If you don't want to be eaten alive by piranhas, you should do yourself a favor and stay away from the rivers in Argentina. It was just last year in 2021 that a 13-year-old girl had her toe bitten off, and 30 people were left with terrible injuries during a massive piranha attack. The young girl had to be taken to the hospital for a skin graft, while the other 30 people suffered relatively minor cuts and gouges, and all because a few locals were trying to cool down during a heat wave. According to local Argentinian news sources, locals had descended on a popular sunbathing spot along the Piranha River. Some were soaking up in the extreme heat, while others were trying to escape it in the water. Those who were splashing around in the lake became the victims of a swimming horde of piranhas. They entered the river like a cloud of death and bit everyone they can find. The water filled with blood, people were screaming, and everyone was trying to get out of the water. The lifeguard couldn't believe his eyes. He was struggling to deal with 30 people all suffering injuries at once, and a little girl missing her toe. But it wasn't the first time something like this happened. Because piranhas move in massive shoals, when they do attack, their victims almost always number in the double digits. In 2013, on Christmas Day, over 60 people were injured in a very similar piranha attack in the same river. This one had dozens of people being bitten, and over 20 children suffering injuries. Number 7. A dead kayaker in North Carolina. North Carolina may just be the deadliest place in the United States of America to go kayaking. The French Broad River's most recent victim was identified as Florida resident Delmer Melvin Garat. Deputies with the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office pulled his body out of Ledges River Park, where it had gotten pinned between some rocks. His death marked the 4th kayaking fatality of the year for western North Carolina rivers. Nobody knows exactly what happened to Delmer, but it seems like he lost control on the rapids. A rescue swimmer arrived on scene and couldn't even make it to the flipped kayak because the current was so strong. They had to wait to reach the kayak in an inflatable boat. Only then were rescuers able to free the kayaker from his trap, which took them 30 minutes. If it took a team of experts half an hour to get his body out, there was no chance he could have done it himself in the last few seconds he was alive. The other 3 deaths were just as shocking. A man named Matthew Ray, just 19, got pinned to the right side of the rapids in the Green River Narrows and died as his friends tried to pull him to safety. In April, William Greer from Atlanta died in the Linville River. In March, Maria Noakes, a champion kayaker from New Zealand, passed away on the Chioa River. She had been kayaking with her 2 young sons and a group of friends, but they lost sight of her. The next time they saw her, Maria was dead. What's the worst thing you've ever seen happen during a kayaking trip? Let us know about it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe before the end of the video. Number 6. Terrifying croc attack. In the crocodile-infested waters of Leaders Creek near Gunpoint, about 24 miles from the city of Darwin, in the Northern Territory of Australia, something crazy happened. For 3 long hours, a 72-year-old man fought off a barrage of attacking crocodiles. He had been checking crab spots with his friends in a small aluminum boat when a crocodile intentionally capsized it. The giant reptile smashed into the side of the boat so hard that it tipped them both into the water. Sadly, this was the end of the road for one of the crab fishermen. The younger man got stuck underneath the boat when it capsized and had no way to escape. The older man tried to save him, but was thwarted by the evil crocodiles. By the time the older man managed to get the crocodiles away from the boat, his friend was dead. He then had to push the boat towards the relative safety of the mangroves, while using whatever he could find to fight off the crocodiles. In the end, he managed to get the boat between himself and the crocodiles, with his back up against the mangrove trees. He screamed for help for 3 hours in the water before other crab fishermen heard him yelling and came to the rescue. Number 5. An unexpected whirlpool. In 2018, Donald Wright was as healthy and spry as the best of them at 64 years old. He was an avid outdoorsman and loved exploring the scenic parts of his home state of Arkansas. Sadly, his love for the outdoors would lead to his death when he was sucked to the bottom of the river and killed in a freak accident. The accident happened when Donald bypassed Dead Man's Curve during his weekend trip and went on down a different path on the river. What he didn't realize was that by bypassing Dead Man's Curve, he himself would soon become a dead man. He came across a whirlpool, a giant maelstrom of doom spinning in the center of the river. By the time Donald saw it and realized what was happening, it was too late. He was already in its area of control. His kayak was sucked down to the bottom of the whirlpool, where Donald drowned. It was definitely the last thing Donald expected when he set out on that day on his kayak. And yet sinkholes are fairly common in the northern part of Arkansas. A whirlpool can form when a sinkhole collapses beneath the limestone floor of a river. It's basically like having a drain suddenly appear at the bottom of a pool. This one was so big, it was able to suck a man and his boat down to the bottom. Number 4. The Houdini of the Ganges. In 2019 in India, a magician who fancied himself a modern Houdini drowned trying to escape from a river. One of his colleagues said he sacrificed himself for magic, but really, it wasn't much of a sacrifice. This was a failed stunt by Chanchal Lahiri that left him being hoisted out of the Ganges River, still bound in chains. Lahiri went by the stage name Mandrake. He had himself lowered into the Ganges River in Kolkata, stuck in a straitjacket and wrapped with chains and ropes. His plan was to escape his binds with just a few seconds, then spring out of the water to the great applause of his audience. What happened instead was that he ran out of air before he even managed to get the straitjacket off. His body was discovered by divers later that evening. It's not clear what exactly went wrong. Mandrake had done the same thing in 2003 and successfully escaped the chains and ropes, but he must have experienced some unforeseen difficulty once submerged. The crowd expected him out within 25 seconds. They stood there on the banks of the river and waited 10 minutes. That was about the point people realized something horrible had happened, and they had to call in the divers. Number 3. Florida River Otters. Florida is another one of those places where you're really taking your life into your own hands by getting into a river. What was supposed to be a relaxing kayaking trip for a 77-year-old woman named Sue Spector turned out to be anything but. She was with a group of 10 friends on a Sunday morning in 2018 when they embarked down the Brandon River. Everything was going just swimmingly until a curious otter climbed onto the front of Sue's kayak. At first, it was pretty miraculous. It's not every day somebody has an otter just a couple feet from them. But the cute little creature turned out to be a diabolical monster. The otter jumped onto Sue's face like a crazed monkey infected with rabies. The animal clawed and scratched. It bit her arm and tried to rip her ears off, and it even tried to eat her nose. As she tried desperately to fight the animal off, her flimsy kayak flipped over. This left her in the cold water, blind and battling for her life. The otter was trying to murder her, and she was running out of air to breathe. Sue was saved by her husband, who beat the otter with his paddle until it let go of his wife. Only then was she able to upright her kayak and take a big gulp of air. But even with the otter gone into the wild, Sue was in deep trouble. She had to go straight to the hospital for stitches and a rabies treatment. Number 2. Tubing tragedy. One of the worst tubing tragedies in the history of the U.S. happened in 2021. It was Wednesday, June the 16th. A family from Eden went tubing with some relatives who were up visiting from Indiana. In total, there were 9 family members. They took their tubes and went out onto the Dan River just before 8 o'clock in the evening. It was already getting dark, which is not the best time to have a boat adventure. At some point during the tubing session, the tubes were sent flying over the Duke Energy Dam, and 5 people were killed. It was absolutely horrific. 4 people were rescued, 3 members of the Eden family, and 1 of the teenage kids from Indiana. Soon after, 4 dead bodies were pulled out of the river, including that of 2 adults, 1 teenager, and a 7-year-old. The final body was found the next morning when somebody called 911 because they just saw a corpse floating in the water. Nobody was really at fault here. The family shouldn't have been out at night, but there also should have been more signs about the danger of the nearby dam. Those driving the boats didn't even realize they were coming up on a sheer drop, leading to something nobody in a swimming suit could possibly survive. And number 1, river stunt gone wrong. A teenager in India was making a TikTok video in a flooded river when things went very wrong. This was in 2019, and the boy's name was Afzal, a teen in Adalpur village. He and 2 of his friends were making stunt videos, diving off large blocks into a massively flooded river. The flood was so extreme, the river was gushing over the edges of the blockade and into the street. The teens were running up to the edge, hopping onto blocks, and then diving in for fun. But what started as fun ended in terrible tragedy. The teens filmed Afzal plunge into the floodwaters. Seconds later, they realized he was struggling to keep his head up. One of the other boys jumped in to save him, but it was no good. The attempted rescuer had to get himself out of the water before it pulled him down as well. Before anyone could even comprehend the seriousness of the situation, Afzal had drowned and his body had vanished. It wasn't discovered until a day later by a team with the National Disaster Response Force. Do you have a crazy river story? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and come back again for the wildest videos. See you next time.